oh my gosh. Somebody just brought in cake balls. Have you heard of cake balls before until now?
I have. I
oh
think
my gosh.
I think they're a millennial thing.
Oh, this is like, oh my gosh. I'm going to wait till we taste before I eat those.
Usually it's on a little stick.
Really?
Did you pull the stick out? You didn't think he'd be able to deal with a stick on there? It's like a piece of cake on a
Holy cake balls, Batman. Cake balls and rye whiskey. So we're going to jump into the rye whiskey now.
Welcome to another trip down the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Mike. So grab a glass of your favorite bourbon and kick back.
We would like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Logheads Home Center for supporting this episode of the Bourbon Road. Find out more about their fine rustic furniture at logheadshomecenter.com. Hello everyone, this is Jim and welcome to the Bourbon Road. It may be a day late, but hopefully our bonus episode gave you a little entertainment in the meantime. And in today's episode, Mike is flying solo at Angel's Envy as he interviews Wes Henderson. I think you're going to enjoy this show as the two of them get into some great conversation while tasting some fine Angel's Envy expressions. And later in the show, Wes announces his new Cellar Collection release and talks a little about the 17 projects they have in the works and how it is working with his boys there at the distillery. And Wes really gives me a hard time for being absent at the interview. And I really feel bad about that. And Wes, if you're listening, my apologies. I promise to make it up in the future. And I hope there'll be a next time. Now, without any further chit-chat on my part, let's get on with the show.
Hey, this is Mike Hyatt from the Bourbon Road, and I'm here at Angel's Envy Distillery in downtown Louisville. Wes Henderson, we're going to have him on today, and he was good enough to have us in here, and we've been trying to work on this for a while, right?
Yeah, it's the bourbon business is crazy right now, as you know. But I'm glad we finally got together, and I'm glad you got to come down and see the distillery. And I understand we'll talk about it later. You got to try something pretty special too. So it was worth the wait, right?
Oh, definitely.
We'll see how this shit turns out. Whether or not it's worth it. Whether I'm entertaining or not. But we'll see that here in a minute. But
we tried to. I hit you up probably a bad time. I hit you up in Bourbon Heritage Month, and then October comes around. That's a busy month for bourbon. And then, the holidays come on in November, and then there's deer season for us. And then December, which is Christmas time.
There's always something.
Yeah.
There really, and anymore, it seems like there's always something, now we're already in Derby planning, in earnest. So it, and with the bourbon industry, the way it is, literally I could be gone every day of the week doing something different somewhere else around the world. And when we started Angel's Envy, I literally was, I traveled all the time, probably 80 or 90% of the time. But now, I'm trying to spend my time in, quality rather than quantity. So I have a life, but yeah, I'm glad we finally got together, and it's always fun to sit down and talk about bourbon, especially with people that have passion for bourbon. And obviously your listeners, if they're listening, and unless they're your family members, they love bourbon too.
Yeah, most of them, I hope they love bourbon, or maybe they're bourbon curious and they just want to know, hey, what's in that Angel's Envy bottle? What makes it special? So that's why we'd like to get as many people in the industry and the culture on our podcast. Now, Jim couldn't come down today. He's a busy man too, so it's just me and you together.
Did he send a note or anything like that, or a gift or an offering or anything because he wasn't here?
He didn't. He did say, come by the house and try this stuff.
Okay, all right. We'll be good to him right now.
But as Jim likes to say every time, hey, we like to get straight to the whiskey.
Yeah, let's do it.
So what's the first pour we got here?
We're going to start with our Angel's Envy flagship bourbon. It's our Angel's Envy Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey finished in port wine barrels. It's I'd say it's kind of the familiar Angel's Envy. It's what we launched with. It's a Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey, about 4 to 6 years old, and then finished in a port wine barrel for up to 6 months or so, ruby port wine barrel. And for those of you that are fans of Angel's Envy, it's very consistent. It's very reliable. It's very complex. And for those of you that are new to bourbon, it's a great bourbon to maybe introduce yourself to bourbon because of the taste profile. So I figured we start there and then we kind of work our way to something else.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Cheers.
Cheers. You can definitely know when he knows it. You can smell that. I think that port a little bit.
You do. You get a little bit of the hint of that port. And those are some of the dried fruits. And you get the dried fruits on the, when you taste it as well. And it's your typical Kentucky bourbon notes. We've got just a little bit of oakiness, a little bit of woodiness. The oakiness comes out a little bit more if you add water to it, which I'm not a big fan of. You get maybe some vanilla, some banana on the nose for sure. And there are a million different, you can sit here all day. There are 300 and some odd different aroma components for bourbon. Pretty much any damn thing you can think of is an aroma component. So, but what do you get anything interesting or different in that?
I'm thinking like a fig.
Yeah, fig.
Dried
Absolutely.
Fig, like that Fig Newton cookie,
right.
I don't know. Everybody's different, like you said. Those 3 different deals, but each person has that different sensory.
Well, we do, and we all and our senses change. Anatomically, we change over time, and our taste receptors evolve. Our tastes evolve, and you can be educated on how to taste. By the way, I mean by giving reference samples, you can teach somebody how to be a taster.
Sure,
but you have to be in tune to what those tastes are, what those aromas are, and oftentimes have a basis of comparison, to say, oh yeah, that is lavender, or that is some exotic spice that I didn't realize before, but now that I smell it by itself, isolated, then you can find it within the spirit.
You can get that class right here in Louisville over at Moonshine University, or the Stave and Thief, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's a really good exercise. I started doing it with Scotch initially, and now I'm seeing the bourbon. We do have a bourbon tasting kit. It's got 30 or 40 different aromas in it, which I love. And when I was little, I would go with my dad down to Brown-Forman. I go to work with him on weekends a lot of times, and at Brown-Forman in the R&D department. We can talk more about Dad if you want to, but they had a wall that was probably 10 or 15 foot long, and all it were extracts, flavor extracts, and aroma, and different aromas and things like that. So as a kid, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world to walk up to that wall and pick out anything imaginable that you thought was cool, that there was an aroma, mostly,
and you can smell it.
And you can smell it.
Yeah.
And I still probably have that little bit of kid in me. And every time I see that tasting kit or that aroma kit, I still pull it out and I smell stuff.
So your dad, he is a legend in the bourbon world. He worked for Brown-Forman for how many years?
Dad was there almost 40 years.
40 years. That's a long time. That's loyalty right there.
It is. And, I think it's some of that's generational. The guys older than us a lot of times stayed in places a lot longer than what people do now. But that was his dad's, I think, second job. His first job was right out of college. He was a chemist. He did analysis of samples from Churchill Downs, from horses. And he did that for a while, and then he went to Brown-Forman as a grain chemist, and he spent his entire career there until when he retired, after he founded Woodford, and the rest is kind of history. So he left there after 40 years, and it was several years before you two founded Angel's Envy. Right.
How did that discussion go? How did you say, man, Dad, we need to, it was you or was it him? Hey, we need to make our own bourbon.
Yeah. I worked in the industry years ago, and it kind of come out and started doing some consulting in the industry about the time Dad was going to retire, but was never really interested in being in the business. A lot of it just had to do with because that's what my dad did, and I didn't want to feel like I got any place because of my dad, which is kind of silly now if you think about it. Why not take advantage of those opportunities when you get them? But Dad had been retired for a few years, and a good friend of mine came to me. We were sitting talking one day, and he said, "Well, it's just out of curiosity, why have you never done anything with your dad? You've got a world-renowned distiller, a great reputation, great family name." And my friend Jay, I said, "Jay, I don't really know. I don't know why we never done anything." But then the wheels got turning. So I was living in Florida at the time, and I flew up to Kentucky, and it was a Saturday or Sunday morning, and we were sitting in his basement, and I told Dad I want to talk with him about something. I said, "Dad, I want to start a bourbon brand as a family. What do you think about doing it?" "Well, I want to do it. Do you want to come and do it with us?" And he said, "Sure." No hesitation. No. Now, looking back, he probably had no clue what we were getting into. Actually, I had no clue what we were getting into. But and Dad did what dads do. Even if their son has a crazy ass idea, he's like, "Okay, we'll figure it out." So that's how the scheme was hatched.
Now, so who had the idea for the name?
It was our group, our partnership, all the guys, me, Dad, the other guys that I brought on board. We did it all internally. All the design was done internally. All the concept was done internally. When we keyed in on the Angel shares being something that we thought was a great part of the story that hadn't been told a lot yet, especially 10, 11 years ago. And truthfully, if there wasn't an Australian wine that was trademarked Angel Share, we might have called this Angel Share, but I'm glad that it was like that because it pushed us to come up with some other thoughts and other ideas. And when we decided on Angel's Envy, everything else just fell in place. We loved the idea of wings, the shape of the bottle conformed to the shape of the wings, and everything just really, and you can see I can't show this on the podcast, but if you see it on the wall there, see that clear bottle on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
That was one of the original iterations. Now, we only did 2, but notice how that one's it's a little taller maybe. And this we did 2 iterations and we settled on this one.
We'll definitely, I'll get a photo of that before we leave so that our listeners can look on our website and look at the blog and check that out. I think, it's probably one of the most recognizable bottles on the shelf today. It's not a wine bottle. It's not a whiskey bottle so much shape. It's its own shape, right?
It is. And that's a really good point when you say it's not a whiskey bottle shape. And that's I say it quite often when I talk about this package. I was very scared of it when we first started doing it because it was so different. But the same reasons I was scared of it ended up being the same reasons I loved it because it was so different.
I mean, it's a sexy bottle.
Well, it is, and that's kind of one of the things that breaks the conventionality of it is that it's sexy, but it's not so sexy or feminine that a dude's embarrassed to take it to the checkout stand. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And women love it. It's but now, it's less and less about what the bottle looks like. As women drinking more and more whiskey, they're more experts on what's in the bottle than what the bottle looks like anymore. So,
and most of them have a better sensories than we.
I don't know if I would ever admit that, but I think that the science says that that's probably the truth. And so the little bit of femininity was great. The way you hold it in your hands. We talked to bartenders. The width of the bottle, how it pours.
Sure.
All those little things came into play when you settle on a bottle design. The height is important as it relates to the shelf height and everything else. But you're right; it's become a very recognizable, almost iconic bottle.
Now, we got through the bottle? You guys are deciding at the name and the bottle and stuff. When was the decision made? Said, "Hey, we are gonna take and put our bourbon in port wine barrels." Where did that decision come about?
So the challenge was to Dad, and I wanted to keep Dad really excited and really engaged and really interested in what he was doing all along the way. And I talked with Dad. I said, Dad, let's think of things you did in the past. Let's say Brown-Forman that you really enjoyed doing, or different production methods or things that you enjoyed doing that for whatever reason didn't ever make it out. And Brown-Forman owned Glenmorangie for a long time, which is a very fine single malt, Scotch whiskey that is typically finished in other barrels. So we kept coming back as secondary barrel finishes. He always loved it. He thought it was fun. And I thought it was a key differentiator. We were the first people to really do it successfully commercially with bourbon. And I became fascinated with it as well. And that's just what we locked in on. We locked in on that pretty early too, what we wanted to do. It was risky though. I mean, we're talking 2009.
So it definitely sets you apart from anybody else.
Absolutely. And especially back then. And now you see them all the time.
And where were you guys distilling at then?
We were sourcing. We were sourcing everything. So we sourced from several different producers. And then the difference between us and a lot of other people, though, is we sourced it. We did the finishing. We did the blending. We did the bottling. We did everything else related to. Of course, now all of our production is done here at our distillery.
Sure.
But we had several producers at the beginning where we sourced from very almost identical mash bills. And then we just worked our magic on it.
And for our listeners that don't know what sourcing is, that's mainly gigantic distillers that they'll have extra whiskey put aside and they'll sell that.
Yeah, it can be any, and it's been done for 150 years or more. Distillers, they swap, sell whiskey all the time. It's still done now. Even they'll produce for each other. After the Heaven Hill fire, Heaven Hill didn't have production capacity, so other distillers produced for them for several years.
Them out, right?
Exactly, and we do that in the industry. We were very helpful to each other and very supportive of each other.
Now, if you had to name like one major person in the industry that helped you guys out, helped you and your dad start this, who would that be?
Wow. That's I've never been asked that question before. We were pretty self-reliant. I mean, we had help all along the way. If we ever needed any help with anything or anybody had any questions. Bill Samuels is a dear friend. And I think Bill saw a lot of parallels between what I was trying to do and, how he grew Maker's Mark. So we have a particular fondness for each other, I think. So I would talk to Bill, but we just kind of locked ourselves in a closet, and just kind of did our thing, kept our heads down. We did all the bottle design ourselves. We did all the, creation of the company, all the legal, all the label approvals, all the formula approvals.
I mean, your dad was really... Did you really need anybody else besides your dad?
Well, no, I mean, I definitely, we did. And what Dad brought to the table is that, I had a very distinctive view on what I wanted the product to be like. Dad was very much a validating factor and kept us on the right path. So I take blends to Dad. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Should we take a look at this? Take a look at that? Dad was purposely very hands off because he wanted me to, he wanted me to figure it out.
Yeah.
But he was always there as a very guiding presence and a very validating presence. So, but having Dad's name and Dad's pedigree in the industry absolutely helped us, especially at the beginning.
I'm sure that's something you miss every day. Dad passed away in 2013.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 6 years. Unfortunately, Dad did not get to see the distillery completed. He got to see us break ground, but he got to see the brand grow in a way that he'd never. I think we grew faster than Woodford did at the beginning. We may still be growing as faster than they have, at this point in the longevity of each of the respective brands. But more importantly than that, he got to spend the last few years of his life, and I really believed. I don't know whether Dad felt this way or not. Dad was a melanoma survivor, and for 8 years after he was diagnosed. And I don't know whether in the back of Dad's head he thought that would come back. That he had a kind of a limited amount of time left.
Fear.
Yeah, and it just kind of an awareness. It may not be a conscious awareness. It just may be a sense that, and I might have sensed that too. That now was the time to spend time with my dad. And for him to be able to spend the last few years of his life working closely with me and working with his grandsons, which he absolutely adored, was probably some of the best years of his life. And to be able to share that with him, forget about building the brand, forget about the success of the brand, just the family experience together and creation was a very blessed opportunity.
I mean, it's also nice that you left his name on the bottle and you live that his legacy. It will always be there. It
will, and I'm stand pretty firm on that. People have come to me with the newer expressions and said, Wes, well, you've created these new expressions. Why isn't your signature on the bottle? I'm like, Dad's the inspiration behind this company. Dad is our founding master distiller, and everything we do is inspired by Dad. And so I believe that'll always be that way.
That's awesome. I think you do that. Let's take a little trip back in time.
Oh, here we go.
So you're a young man. You got a dad that's in the business, in the bourbon culture. When would you think would be the first time that you had that first sip of bourbon?
Well, I was absolutely over 21.
Oh man.
Look, I mean, for medicinal purposes, I'm sure that we had stuff. It's a very interesting thing when you're in the industry and you grow up around it. It's like anything else. When you grow up around it, it's like a TV in the room. It's not taboo. It's not unusual. It's just a part of what you do and a part of your life. I mean, my dad would keep New Make under the counter in the bathroom and use it for aftershave. Lab samples, still had the lab label on it.
Sure.
Of New Make. So I certainly had every opportunity in the world to drink whatever, but I think because that lack of taboo and I didn't really drink a lot. Honestly, I still don't drink a ton.
So you can't remember that first sip of...
No, I can't. I can remember the first time I drank. Well, no. Yeah, I can. I can remember the time that I drank way too much, which I'm sure most people do.
I've got a long story about that.
But the funny thing about it is I had access to probably some of the best whiskey on the planet. And when I was in school, I drank this crappy stuff, man. I mean, I drank Old Crow actually Old Crow is not horrible, but this stuff that just like, you'd think that having access to the good stuff, I would drink some better stuff but when you're that age, you're not thinking about you're not a connoisseur of bourbon,
you're just drinking
whiskey that we can manage to find. So yeah, I wish I could tell you exactly when.
You said Old Crow though. That's that's a grand old brand that we've talked about before. We actually had Michael Veach on a couple weeks ago, and Michael, we were talking about how we believe that Jim Beam should bring back that brand to its grandness.
What do you mean? You mean elevate it?
Elevate it to what it used to be.
Right.
Maybe age it a lot longer.
I mean, now would be if you're going to do it, now would be the time. It's a very, I tell you who's done a really good job of this, and I said it to Brown-Forman for years, is to elevate Old Forester.
Oh yeah,
which is one of the best whiskeys in the world, I believe, and to start, elevating that to the place I think it deserves. So it's a good example of how you can take a product that has a lower shelf price and manage to using packaging, using new expressions, reviving the story, remembering that it's the oldest continuously produced bourbon in the world, reminding people of that. So I think it's possible now to maybe do something like that with Old Crow. There's definitely opportunities there to do stuff like that. Now's the time if you're going to do it.
I mean, there's other brands out there like that. I think that it'd be nice to see that they bring back like Cabin Steel, which was a Weller Cabin Steel. The name has changed, and they almost killed that brand off before it was sold to Heaven Hill. And it's still produced today,
right?
But it could come back to being a grand bourbon.
There's still a lot of. I'd be interested to see. I guess you could do a search to look at some of these old trademarks that have expired
and bring them back those.
I've thought about that off and on for quite a while, but I've just never gotten around to it. That would be very fascinating because especially in the history of Louisville, I look at some of these brands and I'm like, what the hell? I mean, there's thousands and thousands of bourbon brands out there, I'm sure, that nobody's ever heard of. And there's some history behind every one of them, most likely. And to be able to do that would be fun, I think.
We had another guy on, a guy named David Rich from Rich Grain Distilling down in Canton, Mississippi, and he brought back an old brand. He bought the trademark to it, I think, or the rights to the company, and it was out of St. Louis. And he brought it, and I don't know if he was the first in Mississippi to make bourbon, but he's definitely making bourbon in Mississippi.
The first person to make it legally in Mississippi.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of whiskey being made in Mississippi that nobody knows. Nobody's paying taxes on down there.
Probably still a lot of that being done in Kentucky.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So we went back in time and stuff. Let's talk about you walk in this place in this great distillery. You broke ground on here in 2011.
Yep.
And what was the thought? Was that a scary process I'm fixing to take this gigantic step?
Probably not so much, because I was really more involved with building the brand, and we knew we kind of had a tiger by the tail. It's a $27 million. When we built it, was $27 million facility. We probably made a couple $1 million more investment here, as well as investment elsewhere on warehouses and stuff. So. It's always scary when you're taking that next step. It was very exciting because then you're really controlling your own destiny when you're doing your own production.
Who else was downtown at that time?
And that was another thing that I believe took a lot of forethought. We had Evan Williams down there, which is kind of like Distillery Light. It's a great story.
Sure.
And it's definitely a great part of the story of bourbon in Kentucky, but there's not a lot going down there on a production level. We were the first full production facility downtown Louisville. And for those of you that are from Louisville and may not know the history, I started talking about this urban bourbon concept with Jerry Abramson back in 2006 or 2007. And Jerry was all for it. Of course, Jerry was the biggest cheerleader for the city you've ever seen. But and then, of course, Mayor Fisher came in, and Greg has been a tremendous supporter. But when we were talking about doing it in the late 2000s, it was definitely a novel idea. And, the thought I had about it is that there was so much history downtown, and it really kind of got jacked. It kind of got jacked and taken out,
sure,
to surrounding areas. And
there's no need for the river no more, right?
Well, that was the basis of the city. The city was founded because of the river, and the river was very important. And I still think that the river was important for commerce, but when these distillers moved out to other areas, but that history was forgotten. And to be able to bring it back to an urban bourbon setting, I thought would be a lot of fun. And we considered other stuff too. I mean, I thought about buying the old Taylor distillery. I looked at the old Crow distillery out there on the same out in Milltown or Millville,
yeah,
which is like what, 5 people live there. They all work at the distilleries.
There's nothing but distilleries out there.
Yeah. So in the old Taylor place, I loved it, but to me it looked like a money pit, and but it was beautiful. But then I started keying in on urban bourbon, so that's how we ended up here.
I think it's awesome you guys revitalized downtown Louisville. I think is one of the key points. You're right across from the ballpark here. There's breweries coming in, more businesses coming in Louisville. It's making Louisville look nicer. How can you go wrong with that when you help a city out and bring more people downtown?
I don't think you can. And everybody works together so well. Everybody plays well together. All the distillers play well together. We've kind of got all different pieces of the puzzle. Like I said about Evan Williams earlier, I don't think you're going to go there and learn a ton about distilling, but you're going to learn a lot about the history of bourbon in Louisville, the history of the river, and just a different piece, and at Old Forester, you're going to get another piece. They've got a cooperage there, which is cool as shit, and not everybody gets to see that.
Sure.
So everybody kind of has a little something different they can add to it. And we all work together very closely. I work a lot with Campbell Brown at Brown Foreman and those guys. And, we're all pulling in the same direction here.
Well, so we'll go ahead and finish up.
Because I'll keep talking. I'll keep yakking as long as you sit here. So,
you put some chocolate out there.
Well,
for
let's
me.
do that. Let's pour another.
We'll finish this up.
Let me do this. Do you want to take a break or?
Yeah, we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll drink some bourbon.
We'll drink some bourbon and then we'll eat some chocolate too.
And then we'll come back and you got a second expression for us to try. And we'll see you back in a minute.
Hang around.
We would like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Logheads Home Center for supporting this episode of the Bourbon Road. Logheads Home Center, nestled in the hills of Kentucky, is an industry leader in building handcrafted rustic furniture. Family owned and operated, they take pride in offering only the very best for their customers. The Logheads, and that's what they like to call themselves, are skilled woodcrafters who are passionate about creating rustic furniture for people who appreciate the beauty of natural wood. Owners Tommy and Gwen don't just sell the rustic lifestyle, they live it. And you can be sure that Logheads furniture will always be handcrafted in Kentucky by artisans who embrace the simple way of life. Logheads rustic furniture is made from northern white cedar, a sustainable wood that's naturally rot and termite resistant. Its beauty and quality will add warmth to your earthy lifestyle for generations to come. Be sure to check out everything they have to offer at logheadshomecenter.com. And while you're at it, give Tommy and Gwen a shout on Facebook or Instagram at Logheads Home Center.
So we're back for the our second half, and for our second pour, Wes, what do you got for us?
Let me ask you a question. You got through like one question in the last half hour, right? You got a long list, and I only let you get in one question. Is that about right?
No, I got a few. I got down through there.
All right, okay, that's cool.
A lot of the questions were about the bottle, your dad. This second half, we're gonna
we
talk
answered
about family.
So we answered some, even though we didn't like go direct. Okay, that's cool. All right,
we hit some extra stuff that I think our listeners will find interesting about Louisville, Kentucky, and
good.
This second half, let's talk about
whatever
the
you want to
future,
talk
and
about.
let's talk about your family.
Okay. All right. Do you want to take a quick drink of this bourbon? And what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, you've got a chocolate there, right?
I done sucked that chocolate down, and she
gosh.
actually poured me some extra
You
bourbon.
didn't listen
and I
to
drank
directions.
That too.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's go back to the family stuff.
So let's talk about our first. What do we got for this pour?
The second pour.
Second pour.
So the second pour is our Angel's Envy Rye whiskey. Oh my gosh. Somebody just brought in cake balls. Have you heard of cake balls before until now?
I have. I
oh
think
my gosh.
I think they're a millennial thing.
Oh, this is like, oh my gosh. I'm going to wait till we taste before I eat those.
Usually it's on a little stick.
Really?
Did you pull the stick out? You didn't think he'd be able to deal with a stick on there? It's like a piece of cake.
Holy
on a
cake
lollipop.
balls, Batman. Cake balls and rye whiskey. So we're going to jump into the rye whiskey now. This is our rye whiskey finished in ex-rum barrels. It's become one of those things that we see people talk about quite a bit. It's 6 to 8 year old rye whiskey, 95% rye mash bill, finished in a rum barrel for up to 18 months. And right off the bat, have you ever had the rye before?
I have.
Oh, okay. All right. So I figured that. Silly question. Right off the bat on the nose, you get that molasses. It's almost like dessert in a glass, creme brulee. It does have an element of sweetness to it when you taste it, but I don't think it's as sweet as your nose believes it to be. And at 100 proof, you still get a little kick there. But I also believe that if I didn't tell people it was 100 proof, they wouldn't know. Because it just definitely drinks.
You think it drinks like a 90 proof or higher?
No, lower. Lower. I think it definitely, somewhere in that range probably.
Now that's a rye whiskey I can get into right there. And a lot of our listeners know that I'm a wheated bourbon guy. I love some wheat bourbon.
My son Andrew keeps pushing to do some wheated stuff, and one of these days we probably will get around to it. Let's do this. Do me a favor, take another sip of that whiskey. And then take a bite of that chocolate, that white chocolate. And then after you take a bite of the chocolate, take another sip of the whiskey and see what it does to the flavor there. We designed these chocolates, by the way. I sat down with a chocolatier. So after you chew that, take another sip of the rye if you would. And it's a really good exercise in tasting and how things complement each other and how they can alter it. It completely changes the taste profile, having that little bit of chocolate.
I actually think it takes some of the sweetness out of the rye whiskey a little bit. For me, it does. I kind of feel bad for chewing on these angel wings.
I never thought about that till you just mentioned it.
Yeah, well, it probably wasn't going to hurt me any to chew on some angel wings.
No, we'll get some more. So we do the same thing with our bourbon. If you want to tour the distillery, we feature some chocolates along the way as a pairing exercise. So yeah, that's our rye. The rye has been a lot of fun. It's very unique, just like anything else we do. It's very bold. The flavors or aromas are very much in your face. It's very aggressive in the finish. Unlike the port barrel finish, which is very subtle, this is not subtle. The rum barrel just jumps out and smacks you upside the head.
I think a lot of whiskey drinkers, this would be perfect for them to start with.
That's a really good point. The high proof sometimes can be an issue, but I will tell you that people who don't drink whiskey drink this, and you're right. I mean, they tend to love it. And even people that don't like rye, they say, I don't like rye whiskey. I don't like, blah, blah. And I was thinking, I said, please just do me a favor. Just take it, takes just a teeny tiny sip. And because of that finish is so dominant, you still get the spiciness of the rye, but it's unlike any other. It's almost its own category.
Some people say it's not its own category, but I think it definitely is. Rye whiskey is rye whiskey. And some of them are different, but this is definitely, it's got great legs on it in the glass. Still got that oily, that taste, coats your mouth. I love it.
I agree. Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
And I'm sure some of our listeners are like, what? This wheated bourbon guy is sitting there loving on some rye whiskey.
It's all good, man. You can love more than one thing.
Yeah.
Except for women.
Yeah. One woman, right?
Right.
So let's talk. You talked a little bit about your tour and how you have chocolates on your tour. What can one of our listeners, when they come in and take a tour, what can they expect?
They expect to have a blast. It's we have a great team here, very engaging. Our distillery guardians that do the tours. It's a full production facility, so you get to see everything that relates to Angel's Envy. We talk about the history of the family. We talk about the history of the brand, how it was developed, and we take you through the entire process here and up close. And we also have some interactive tours where you can fill your own bottle.
That's pretty new, right?
Yeah, a few months old. Yeah, we reimagined it a little bit. We tightened it up. We also have a behind the barrel tour for rye. So you're actually going and tasting rye out of the barrels. So we've created some other experiences in addition to our signature tour is what we call it. So we were consistently ranked one of the top visitors locations in the city on TripAdvisor, like 2 or 3 or 1 sometimes. So.
And you offer a military discount too, right?
We do. Free for military with military ID. We've been working on maybe doing something with first responders as well. So, because that's very near and dear to my heart. And, we definitely, as you can tell by the stuff in my office that I have from the military up here, I'm a pilot as well. So anybody that flies airplanes, I have a special affinity for. So, yeah, we definitely take care of those who've taken care of us over the years.
Now, I never have flown an airplane, but I've made a couple boats fly in my military career.
Yeah, that's a whole different ball game right there, isn't it?
Well, there's more planes in the ocean than there are boats in the sky. I could always say that.
There you go. That makes sense. Yeah. Now that I think about that, you're exactly right.
So it's always safer to get on a boat
but it's all physics. It's thrust and lift and whatever you got. I mean, you got a boat, you got those things. You can get out of the water, right?
You can get them out of the water. That's a pretty awesome thing. So the tour, I think that's that you can fill your own bottle here. And there are some other distilleries that have started that in the past couple of years, but what a great experience. You can come here, you can get that bottle filled. You can actually get it laser engraved here too.
Laser engraved. You also fill out we make you do the whole thing. If you're going to fill it, we're going to make you fill it. You're going to fill it. You're going to fill out your own side labels, package it all together. We label it, or we log it in a book. So if you come here 20 years from now, 50 years from now, you can see that bottle as it was logged in. And it's actually genius on my part because we make you do the labor and we charge you more for it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. But everybody seems to love it. It's a beautiful box. So the tour usually sells out.
You guys are just kicking on all cylinders. Now you got a cast strength release every year. This past year you had a great one, and the boxes though, for those, whose idea was that to come out with that box?
The box has evolved over the years, and I wish I had I don't have one of the first boxes in here. I would show you and give you a picture of it. When we started Angel's Envy, my partners initially, we did the first one in 2012, which was right after we launched the brand. They did not want to do a cast strength. They were totally against it. They said, Wes, if you want to do it, you freaking figure out how to do it. So I said, okay. So I designed the box. I came up with the concept, the whole deal. And we did the first one in 2012, which Paul Picoltney had the #1 spirit in the world in 2012, which was pretty cool. But the box has just evolved. Now the box itself is a work of art. The way that my team has put that together, it's a display piece. As you know, you've seen it.
Well, I got one on my shelf. I love it. And I think that's the same thing about your bottle in that box. My opinion is I don't want to put a bottle of whiskey on my shelf for display, even if it's for drinking, if it looks unpleasing. It just, to me, I believe in feng shui. Everything has a feeling to it.
I get that.
A flow. And if I put something that looks cartoony up on my shelf and everything else is old oak and wood.
You don't have a bottle of Ron Burgundy Scotch?
I do not. I'd like to have him on.
Yeah. That was genius. The genius about it is I bought a bottle of it just because I thought it was cool.
But that's my opinion, I guess.
I understand that. Yeah. I totally get it. I think there's also some pride behind it too. If you're going to bring people into your bar and you want to kind of, you want to show off what you got a little bit, why not put your best foot forward?
Yeah.
That's the way I feel about it too. Hey, here's some stuff from pre-prohibition, blah, 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 blah,
and I looked around your office, and you do have some pretty awesome old bottles in here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just amazing to me that the love for that history of the bourbon culture, and sometimes that's getting lost, and some people don't appreciate that. They just drink it dusty to drink it dusty.
Right. Well, and it's harder to find. That's one of the problems I see here lately is that, I'm collecting stuff, a lot of it for historic reasons and research, especially pre-pro things, and they're so expensive now and so hard to get because people just want to covet them. Yeah, and as opposed to, it's okay to drink them, it's okay to enjoy them, but it's driven the prices up to where it's, we want to be able to preserve as much of that history as we can, and to have samples of that and to be able to reference that, it enables us to do that. So but I still buy stuff. I pay stupid amounts of money for stuff that's crazy, but I want that for research, so I'm willing to do it.
Let's talk about that a little bit since you brought it up. What's your thoughts on the secondary market?
It is what it is. If there's a demand for something, there's going to be a market. The market's going to figure out how to deal with it. And I think it's unfortunate in many ways because it blocks people out. Prices block some people out from enjoying certain things, and people that collect just to collect. It drives me nuts when I meet somebody and the first thing they say is Pappy Van Winkle, and that's all they know. Not because it's not a great brand, because they're dear friends and it's a great brand, but I want this because nobody else has it and because I can afford it. And most of them think they know everything they know in the world to know about bourbon. And I'm just like, okay, have at it.
But they don't like the Pappy Van Winkle. They do not like that secondary market at all.
I talked to Preston about that a few months ago when they came out, saying they were going to go after everybody in the secondary market. I don't doubt their sincerity at all because they're wonderful people, but in a way they ought to wake up every morning and say thank you to the secondary market because that's one of the things that's driven that brand to the spot that it is now. So, but it also comes back to what I said a minute ago, is that it takes it out of the hands of normal, I say normal people, no, that's of your average working guy isn't going to pay $2,000 for a bottle of something, and I don't blame him.
Like me, I can't.
I'm not going to pay.
I can't pay $2,000 for that.
And even if I can, I'm not. So and especially not, and then put it on my shelf,
sure,
and not open it. There's something wrong there. So the market is what it is. The market's always going to drive where things go. It's unfortunate in many ways, but it's also raised the profile. Our cask strength 2012 cask strength I've seen for $4,000 online.
That's crazy.
Now, part of me thinks, oh my God, that's ridiculous. I can't believe that. The other part of me thinks like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Somebody will pay $4,000 for it. But I don't know if that's a long-winded answer to your question, but
you're good. Hey, so let's talk about family. So this is a family business.
Got a lot of kids.
How many boys you got?
I have 6 boys.
How many girls?
No girls.
No girls.
I have 2 granddaughters though.
So you got 2 boys that are in the business big time with you.
Now I have 4.
4.
Started out with 2, and early on, Andrew and Kyle were with me early on. Kyle was with me before he was even actually. Kyle and Andrew joined before they were 21. Doing blending and stuff like that. So, and then in the last year and a half or so, Spencer came on as a distillery guardian initially, and now he's in production. And Connor is in production as well. So my 4 oldest are active or full-time members or workers working with the distillery.
Now, is there any plans for you guys to do something special together?
I thought you were going to ask me if there were any plans to have any more kids, and I'm like, no.
No,
that ship sailed.
I don't wish men our age probably we don't wish that on anybody.
My grandkids wear my ass out, and I often say to my wife, I'm like, how do we do it? We had one time had like kids, 4 or 5 kids between 5 and newborn. I don't know how the hell we do it. So doing things with the boys, that was the question. We're already doing things. It's a very collaborative effort here, especially on the cask strength. They contribute a lot to that as they pull out barrels throughout the year that we end up selecting for cask strength. We have meetings regularly about innovation, and I push them out. I push them out of the nest on a lot of stuff. Andrew came to me with an idea of some barrels he wanted to finish in, I don't know, about 8 months ago. And I think he expected me just to take the idea and do it. I said, no, do it. Go ahead. Find the barrels.
When we were walking in here, I seen one of them in his desk. His head was down. He was working.
They work their butts off. They really do. They have an amazing work ethic. They're very respectful of the industry. They don't take anything for granted as to why they're here. I mean, sometimes I think you see a little entitlement because they're kids. Which, that's not unusual, right?
That's every kid. I think that's I think
anymore it's sad, it's really sad. But look, I've had to work my ass off, my entire life. And I think that the kids see that and they appreciate that. And they know the meaning of hard work and the rewards you get from hard work. And they know the meanings behind, doing the right things and being charitable and, working throughout the community to do the right thing. So I've got great kids. Couldn't ask for better kids.
Now, so you talk about charity there with your kids. You guys do some great charity here, all right?
I think so. I mean, we do a lot of on a daily basis, I think we're doing something that I'd consider, I don't know if I guess you would consider it charitable or being part of the community or giving little pieces of ourselves that can maybe be beneficial to others. On a sustainability issue, our sustainability platform, our Toast the Trees, is huge now. In September, the month of September, for every hashtag Toast the Trees that someone posts on social media with a picture of something Angels Envy, we plant an oak tree. And it's our way to give back some of the oak trees that we've used to build, to make barrels. This past year, we did over, I think, like 34,000 hashtags. So we are going to plant 34,000 baby oak trees.
That's a lot of trees.
It's a lot of trees. And we plant a good, I say a majority of them, we plant a good slug of them.
How long is it? Was it 50 years or 60 years before that tree could ever become a barrel?
At least,
right?
yeah. At least.
That's thinking of the future and our future children and their children. So they can enjoy bourbon just like me and you do.
It is. And I think that it's funny, and not just in life is the same way in business. And, you set out, you start doing things for a certain reason or a certain way. Let's say you're going to do this. And it's interesting how it evolves over time. When the Toasted Trees thing first came out, I just thought, oh, this is a really cool marketing idea. I think it'll gain some traction. It'll get us some recognition, but then it took on a life of its own. Then we realized the impact of what we were doing and how it's been embraced and all the good we're doing. So it's turned into almost a platform of sustainability. So something that just kind of started out as maybe being a good way to get people's attention and do a little something has turned into a lot of something. And it's really it's really been great to see it grow.
Now you're a first responder also. Mm-hmm. You're a certified firefighter.
Yep.
So how do you guys do anything with that with first responders?
We do a lot of special tours. We do a lot of special engravings. We're looking to do a first responder program. We do it for military now, active duty military and retired military, where they get free admission. We're also working on a program for first responders. 4 of my family members are state certified firefighters. I'm also a death investigator with the coroner's office. So, we're all involved in fire or law enforcement in some shape, form, or fashion. So we have a keen sense of that also adds another layer of social responsibility to what we do here and consuming spirits responsibly, because we're out sometimes seeing the consequences of bad decisions and people who don't consume adult beverages responsibly. That gives us a heightened awareness of how important it is that we play a big role in making sure that we communicate and do the right thing as far as responsibility goes.
You talk about that, and I think some people have asked me about that. Why do you buy so many bottles of bourbon or something? And to me, it's a safe, responsible thing to not go out to the bar every 5 or 6 days. Plus, I can't recover like I used to.
Oh, I'm into that. But guess what? Now there's Uber.
There is not out where I live.
Well, you live out in the sticks, which is I guess it's beautiful out there where you live. And we're seeing those trends change with younger people. Whereas my generation, we'd often drink and get behind the wheel of a car, which was totally insane, totally wrong. But now with the advent of Uber and other things like that, we're seeing that kids are taking, and adults now there was never an excuse to do it before.
Sure.
There's no way there's an excuse to do it now because there's so many other options.
A lot of people gather at home these days and share a bottle together responsibly.
For sure.
And I think that's, me and my wife, we'll set out on our back deck and, hey, it's not a very far commute from our back deck to the bed.
No, it's not. You're not going to get pulled over walking from the deck to your bedroom either.
Now she might say, "Hey, you need to come to bed because you're out there singing on the back deck to some old Hank Jr. or something."
There you go, scaring the squirrels and the deer away back there.
Yeah, or our neighbor's far away. I think she's afraid they can hear me singing.
You're not. They promised me you're going to sing if you came today.
No, that's not going to happen.
All right. Okay. All right.
I do not sing very well.
Okay.
I can sit here and just shoot the shit with you and bullshit all day long about bourbon.
That's all good.
So, Whiskey Guardians. Tell me about that.
We keyed in on very early that it was going to be important for us to be involved in the bartender community, especially when we're bringing something to market that has a story that's a little different, the finishing. So we aligned very early with bartenders. So we sought out some of the top bartenders in the world in their different markets, and we brought them on as what we call our whiskey guardians. So they are our active promoters and guardians and ambassadors of the brand. They also still work at local bars, so they're plugged into the community. Many of them are members of the U.S. Bartenders Guild, and so they do trainings in market. They do staff trainings with other bartenders. They do our charitable endeavors. They'll do tastings. When I go to market, they set things up for me. And it's turned into a program that a lot of people are trying to emulate because it's been so successful. So we have 70 or so of these folks around the country. They're extended family members, not extended. Well, I mean, they're family members that are out telling the story. And we bring them all here once a year, and we have a big family party and great, just the most amazing people you'll ever meet.
I think that's a way to not only tell people about your whiskey and your bourbon, but it's also expert in those 50 different cities.
Well, and it's real.
Yeah,
it's real. It's people that have a passion, not just for Angel's Envy, but are respected as bartenders, respected as recommending great spirits. And, the people we hire to, there's good humans. I don't really know any other way. The spirits industry is so diverse. It's so caring and so willing to help out, and to have all those people on my team that are out there doing it all over the world now, because we're launching internationally, is really an amazing thing to be a part of.
So you guys got a great bartender here too, from what I understand.
Yeah, but don't tell him that, because the last time somebody told him that, he wanted more money and his head was too big and everything like that. Yeah, we do. We've got a team of bartenders here. Mike Bone heads up the team, and they just created the new menu, which is did you see that?
I haven't saw it. Jim was here the other night with you guys, and he got to see everything, and
it's the Seinfeld menu.
He was just bragging on everything. He was so excited. I think he hurt him a little bit. He couldn't be here today, but he was like, man, their bartender there just makes some awesome drinks.
He's phenomenal. So this menu is they're themed menus every quarter or so. It's a menu about nothing this quarter, which is a Seinfeld based menu. We've done Willy Wonka. We've done Game of Thrones. I can't think of all the different, but they're all themed cocktails. And if you come to our distillery here, you can go to the bar and have a cocktail. It's a mad scientist laboratory going on over there. They've got stuff growing over there that I don't even know what it is, and some of it may be deadly. I don't know, but I mean, they make all their own infusions, their own, the spices, their own syrups, their own bitters. All that stuff is done back there, and they're artists and scientists.
It's nice that you have that. Some people might not want to come in here and just drink that straight pour of bourbon or whiskey. I mean, Louisville's home of the old fashioned.
Why not show off the versatility? Bourbon is one of the most versatile spirits in a cocktail you can get. And even people that don't drink whiskey, I guarantee you, to a largest extent, if from 99% of the people say they don't like whiskey, I can find a whiskey cocktail that you will like.
Yeah. There's no doubt about that.
I was making Kentucky Ritas at the music festivals in September.
Kentucky
Ritas. It's exactly what it sounds like.
It's got some bourbon in it.
It's got some bourbon in it, but it's got some jalapenos in it and some lime juice, and just what you would expect. It's a Kentucky Rita, and it's really freaking good.
That does sound good. I'm gonna have to look that up and figure out how to make that.
You can't look it up. It's just think margarita and substitute whiskey.
Well, you're just gonna have to send me a. All
right, I'll send you a care package out to Shelby County.
Maybe I'll come over to LaGrange.
There you go.
So the future. Let's talk about the future a little bit. So before I came here today, Jim came out here the other day, and you guys had a media event, and he got to try your new Tanny Port that's coming out for 2020.
Right.
And I tried that, and it is fantastic.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, the Tawny Port finish will be out. It'll be out any day now. And it's a 10-year-old bourbon. It's the oldest bourbon we've ever released. And then it's finished in that Tawny Port barrel for another 10 months. Very complex, very deep, dark, great color, great aroma. And, it's fun because as we get older, we have availability of different stocks. Not necessarily has to be older stock, but different stocks and different taste profiles we can play with. So the Tawny has turned out amazingly well.
Now, is that going to be in a box or anything? Or
no, it's not in a box, but it's in a special. It's our Cellar Collection, which is the second release in our Cellar Collection. The first was the Oloroso Sherry we did last year. This is the second piece of the Cellar Collection puzzle. The bottle is a little more upscale, a little more looks a little more frou-frou, kind of. Nice frou-frou is not a good word for it, but it's just a little more. It's a beautiful package. I don't know any other way to describe it.
Can the bottle get any sexier than it already is?
This one's a little sexier, I think. It's the gold lettering on it is really cool. We've changed the labeling around the label schematic a little bit, but we wanted to have a consistent labeling within the Cellar Collection.
Sure.
So
up on your shelf up there, I noticed you had a bottle that's been bedazzled.
I do. That was a gift. I don't remember who gave that to me. Yeah, she sent me a bedazzled bottle, and I've never bedazzled anything, but looking at the intricacies of so she bedazzled, for those of you, obviously you're listening, you can't see, but she's bedazzled the wings on the bottle.
It's pretty awesome looking.
And I would assume that the detail to do that has got to be incredible.
definitely took some time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how you bedazzle. I don't know how the hell you do it, but yeah, she's phenomenal, and she did a great job. And some of the other bottles up there, you see, some of them are bottles Dad signed. Some of them are bottles that with different labeling that we didn't end up using. So I just like to keep those things around. It's a cool reminder of how we got where we got.
So what can our listeners, you already said that there might be a weeded expression in the future.
Yeah, that's probably a way out. We've got 17 different different innovations in progress right now, and we don't have a timeline for this stuff. It just so happened we had a cellar release last year. We've got a cellar release this year. That's more happenstance than anything, because we're not on that gerbil wheel where we're going to spit out something every 6 months or every year. We'll put it out when we're ready to put it out. So of those 17, I don't really have any. There's several leading contenders, but I don't know where we're going to go yet. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do, but rest assured, they're all fun, they're all unique, and they're all within the kind of the same spirit, of what we've done up to this point.
So where can our listeners find you guys on social media?
Everywhere. Of course, Angels Envy, our website, www.angelsenvy.com. I encourage you to join our 500 Main group, which is it's a little group of folks that have Angels Envy in common. You get advance notice of special releases. As a matter of fact, if you remember 500 Main, you're able to pre-purchase your tawny bear or your tawny bottle before anyone else. Please follow me. I'm at KY Bourbon Maker, on Twitter and Instagram, and I interact a lot with my followers, and that's a lot of fun. So you can find us all around. I do events all the time.
Wes, it's been great having us on today. We'd love to come back and maybe sit down with you and your boys.
Would love that.
All at once.
That's fine. And see if you're going to sing. We're going to make you sing for your supper next time you come back.
Sing from a bourbon.
There you go.
It'd be great to hear their stories about their dad and about their grandfather. And
we'll see about the dad stories. We'll have to. I'll have to hear those in advance from them. But
I'd like to hear their stories of their first drink of bourbon.
Well, I don't want to be in the room when that happens. But it is interesting to hear their perspective, because they have a totally different perspective than I do, because they've been a part of it, but they've also seen it from a periphery as it developed. So yeah, we'll hook you guys up, and I think it'd be fun. But you're welcome back anytime, and thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it. Even though you didn't bring everybody, that's okay. I got abandoned by the rest of the team today. It's okay, man. It's all good.
Yeah, Jim's it's gonna hurt his heart.
I'm gonna rub it in. I'm gonna rub it in his ass really good here for not being here. But we're glad we got to see him. Was it yesterday? Was it the day before yesterday? Tuesday. I lost total track of time. But
track of time.
Anytime, my friend. Thank you very much.
So listeners out there, you can find me and Jim on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find me at One Big Chief on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm on Twitter a little bit, but not too much. Join our Facebook group, The Roadies. We're on there all the time talking. You can also find us on Spotify and on Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, almost anywhere you can listen to a podcast. Listen to us. If you like us, leave us a 5-star review.
If you don't, just don't bother.
No, we want those.
Leave us a 5-star review anyway.
Yeah.
But they're going to love you, so it really doesn't matter, right?
If they like my deep voice, leave us a review.
There you go. Perfect.
We'll see you on down the Bourbon Road.
We do appreciate all of our listeners, and we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with us here on the Bourbon Road. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if so, we would appreciate if you'd subscribe and rate us a 5-star with a review on iTunes. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Bourbon Road. That way you'll be kept in the loop on all the Bourbon Road happenings. You can also visit our website at thebourbonroad.com to read our blog, listen to the show, or reach out to us directly. We always welcome comments or suggestions, and if you have an idea for a particular guest or topic, be sure to let us know. And again, thanks for hanging out with us.